Evan grinned as the auctioneer handed him the paperwork. He couldn't believe his luck, winning an entire warehouse for only $500. The small rural town's real estate auction had felt more like a garage sale, with old barns and neglected farmland on the block. Yet, when the warehouse came up, he was the only bidder. He could only assume these hicks didn't know what they were doing. The photos showed a sturdy structure sitting on several acres of pristine land just outside town. Sure, it was isolated and needed a little TLC, but it would have been immensely profitable at 10 times that price. The reaction to the property was certainly odd, though. The townsfolk had stared at him with peculiar expressions, a mix of pity and relief. Even the auctioneer's warning when he handed the deed to Eva was strange. "Are you sure?" he asked. "Once you sign it, and everything that comes with it, is yours." Evan shrugged it off, chalking it up to small-town quirks, and signed. That evening, Evan drove out to his prize. The sun dipped below the horizon as he arrived, painting the fields in hues of deep orange and shadow. The warehouse loomed. Before him, a hulking mass of rusted metal and broken windows. Weeds clawed at its foundation, and the faded lettering on the front read, "Grayson's Storage." The first thing he noticed as he stepped out of his car was the silence. Not the peaceful kind he expected from the country, but a dead silence. No birds, no insects buzzing, hell, not even the rustling of leaves in the breeze. He shook it off and unlocked the heavy padlock on the door, forcing it open with a screech that echoed into the dark. He flicked the light switch. The lights flickered on. Evan sighed. At least there's power. Inside, the air was heavy and stale, carrying a faint metallic tang. Dust swirled under his feet as he moved deeper, taking in the rows of forgotten shelves, crates, and scattered debris. This place was a gold mine for reselling. Antique furniture, tools, even an old safe tucked in a corner. Then he saw it. In the center of the warehouse stood a single wooden chair. A rope hung from the ceiling above it, swaying slightly, despite the lack of breeze. The chair was splintered, its seat darkened with stains that Evan didn't want to examine too closely. "Okay, weird," he muttered, his voice sounding too loud in the oppressive space. The rope stopped swaying, coming to an immediate, unnatural halt. Evan slowly backed away, his legs shaking. His shoe caught on something and he stumbled. Looking down, he saw a scattering of photographs. Picking one up, he held it to the light. It was a grainy black and white photo of a man sitting in the chair, his face twisted in terror, eyes wide and staring at something just out of frame. Another photo showed the same man, but now his neck bore a rope. His lifeless body slumped. A low creak echoed through the warehouse. Evan spun around, but the lights cut, plunging him into darkness. "Hello?" he called out, his voice trembling. The silence answered, growing heavier by the second. Then came the whispering, faint, disjointed murmurs that seemed to come from all around him, speaking in some long-forgotten language David did not recognize. Evan fumbled for his flashlight, the beam casting a dim glow, and he spun toward the door. Somehow the door was much farther than he remembered. Shelves and debris now stood between him and the exit. He scanned the room, the warehouse now a labyrinth of shelves, decaying furniture and metal. The whispers returned, as if coming from directly behind him. Evan didn't dare to look. His footsteps echoed as he ran, heart hammering. The whispers grew louder, now angry, shouting over one another, before suddenly ceasing altogether. Evan stopped. The silence felt tense, as if anticipating something terrible. Suddenly, a loud, inhuman shriek echoed through the room. Evan fell backward. There, in the darkness ahead, the chair stood once more. The whispers returned, as if coming from directly behind him. Evan didn't dare to look. His footsteps echoed as he ran, heart hammering. The whispers grew louder, now angry, shouting over one another, before suddenly ceasing altogether. Evan stopped. The silence felt tense, as if anticipating something terrible. Suddenly, a loud, inhuman shriek echoed through the room. Evan fell backward. There, in the darkness ahead, the chair stood once more, impossibly close. The rope above it no longer swayed, it was taut. Evan grabbed his flashlight, illuminating the chair fully, and the figure standing next to it. It was the man from the photographs. His face was pale and bloated, his neck marked by an angry, deep groove. His eyes locked on Evan's, and he raised a hand, pointing accusingly. Evan screamed and turned to run, but the door slammed shut before him, the sound reverberating like a thunderclap. Behind him, the whispering returned. Evan slowly turned around, dreading another glimpse of the terrible old man. But the old man wasn't there. Instead, he saw himself, standing on the chair, a demented smile on his face as he pulled the rope around his neck. Evan hardly noticed the rope slowly winding around his own neck as watched in horror. The other Evan winked at him before stepping off the chair. As he did, the rope around Evan's neck pulled him violently into the air. Several days later, the townsfolk gathered at the auction house. The auctioneer banged his gavel. "Next lot, a warehouse on 5 acres of land. We'll open the bidding at $500 on Evan's storage."